After taking 60 flights and traveling to 30 different countries, I finally realized why every non-US business owner needs to access American credit. See, I was that guy that was always sitting in economy, knees pressed against the seat in front of me, telling myself that I was being smart with my money. Because even though I was making $55K a month at that time, business class flights felt like an upgrade that I just didn't need. And I believe that flying first class was reserved for retired Americans that just have way too much money in their savings accounts. But after spending thousands, and I mean thousands of dollars traveling to 30 different countries, I realized that I was scamming myself. I was leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. I was missing out on private airport lounges and the best hotels. And now I'm living a first-class lifestyle with my US credit cards as a non-US resident, non-US citizen that pretty much unlocks free flights and free hotels. That's why in this video, I'm gonna break down why every non-US business owner needs US credit so that you don't make the same mistakes that I did when it comes to traveling. But before we dive in, as a quick disclaimer, there are no income guarantees over here. This is only for educational purposes only. Of course, I've got access to US credit, but this is not a promise that you as a business owner can do the same. Of course, I always recommend you to contact qualified professionals, CPAs, or any accountants that you might personally have, or you can just get in contact with my team to understand your next steps. But let's get straight into it. So at a very early age, I became a salesman making a lot of money. And me being a young person, I always valued the values of frugality. Just like some of the books that I have above, it actually breaks down some of the understandings of frugality. And I always had that specific mindset, right? So I always thought that business class flights was just like an upsell that I would do in a sales funnel, or like first class was for people that were just trying to go on their honeymoon or whatnot. And I always thought that me as a business owner, I did not really need to subscribe to those things because again, I wanted to save my money. So I was making 55K a month. Don't get me wrong. I was making good money along Andrew Tate because I was his salesman at that time and eventually then started my own business and whatnot. And throughout those few years that I was working with him, I had the opportunity to travel to Thailand, to Romania, to many places throughout Europe and Poland and Dubai, all across the USA. And that whole entire time, I was paying full price on economy on one-way flights. And so in the very beginning, I was enjoying myself and I was not that frustrated until I started experiencing a few last-minute experiences, such as when I was in Bucharest and the next day I had to land in Toronto to see my family. Or another experience when I was in Warsaw and a few days later I had to be in Toronto again, like I'm based in Toronto and I had to do a lot of last minute decisions, such as when I was in Kansas, I was trying to go back to Toronto and whatnot. And these last minute decisions led me to pay like 2 or 3 times the price on economy seats. And so personally, my mindset when it came to airplane points and whatnot, because I never thought that airplane points was really such a big deal, right? Like I looked at them as pretty much coupons, right? I'm not the type of person that's going to go and collect coupons at the grocery store and just give them a bunch of coupons and potentially get like a few dollars off. And that was really my mindset, right? I thought that these points was really nothing significant until I got into a few different experiences. And let me give you the most foundational experience that I personally did have. So I was in Warsaw, Poland, and I had to go back home because I got a text from a friend telling me that am I going to show up to a specific party? And so this was a really good friend of mine, which I wanted to show up to this birthday party. And I completely forgot about it. So what I did is I rushed down to Google Flights to figure out how I can actually go back home within a very last minute. And so what I saw was a 1.3K ticket price to go one way back home on economy. And so in my experience after traveling to a lot of different places, I knew that they were upcharging me like crazy because I was doing this at the last second. So instead of purchasing the actual flight, I decided to just breathe a bit and go to my friend Gio. And so my friend Gio was actually an American. He was actually younger than me at that time. He was like 20 years old. So I showed up to his place at the Marriott Hotel. I was in an Airbnb. He was at the Marriott Hotel. He had like upgrades to his suite specifically because he had US credit cards. And again, I never knew that US credit cards was a thing to get as a non-US citizen until I learned about the legal process, and I'll get to that. But specifically, I showed up to Gio's place and I told him like, dude, I'm about to pay 1.3K for economy to go back home. And he told me, dude, were you literally about to spend 1.3K to go one way back to your home country? And I said, well, I had no other options, right? And so he's like, dude, I'm going to sit you down. We're going to learn about the travel hacking system, the travel system, specifically the point system, so that you can learn some important things when it comes to traveling as a business owner. And so soon enough, I realized that the point systems is not just a coupon and insignificant system. Matter of fact, the airline companies, right? So you think about American Airlines and then American Airlines points because they have a point system, right? The American Airlines company that manages all of the redemption, so all of the points, is worth more than the airline themselves. And that's when I started to realize, wait, like this points game is not just an insignificant thing, right? I'm not just getting a few bucks off on actual airplane flights. And so what Gio ended up doing was said, hey, I'm a business owner. I'm already spending money. I've got 7 figures worth of points. I'm going to purchase your flight back home. And so guess what? He put me on a business class seat, which was worth around $10,000 at that time because it was last minute. Pretty much had to only spend $1,000 worth of points to actually get on that seat. So he actually purchased my airplane ticket and I was super grateful for that. And that's when my brain like exploded because at that point, I already took 60 plus airplane flights. I traveled to 30 different countries. I spent 5 to 6 figures worth of my own money that I worked super hard for to go on these experiences and go to travel. And so he not only told me that as a business owner, I should be redeeming points, I should be leveraging US credit cards. I also technically could have been at the Marriott hotel enjoying myself in all of the different hotels instead of going on Airbnbs and trying to move my luggages everywhere and doing some sketchy stuff. So after that trip, my limiting beliefs about US credit started to break because I visibly saw the difference between business class and economy, right? When I took that business class seat, I was like, my goodness, this is so much more different. And as a business owner, I deserve this shit. I've been working very hard. I'm making good money. I should be on these actual seats, right? And that's how it should work if you're a hard worker. But the problem that I have was my limiting beliefs when it came to accessing certain credit cards because I was always afraid of unlocking the full scope of the Canadian credit system, as well as the fact that I knew that Canadian points were worth pretty much nothing. I felt like they were coupons because I was getting barely anything for my Aeroplan points or Air Canada points and whatnot. And I just always thought it was insignificant until I met my American friend that told me that I can get these US credit cards. So after the trip and after the party, I ended up going on Amex Canada and Amex USA and made the difference. Okay, Amex Platinum Canada, Amex Platinum USA. What's the difference there, right? And so same like you would compare with your own country. If you live in Australia, if you live in the UK, if you live anywhere in Europe or Latin America, you can look and compare the US site and the site within your home country and realize that the US site has a better credit card. Like you actually compare the Amex Gold USA and the Amex Gold Canada, the actual value of the US points are higher and the redemptions that you're going to get from those US points are actually even higher. Not even to say that American Express credit cards is not even all that you can get. There are thousands of banks in the USA. You can access 0% interest credit limits, 6 figures on a credit card, and very, very high redemptions for every dollar that you spend. And throughout that time, I had no idea this was possible because I was living in Dubai. I was paying 0% taxes. I always thought that credit was something that gets you into some kind of problems because again, I was afraid of moving money into Canadian bank accounts to then realize that I had some tax issues. And so I then started to really properly learn how this looked like. Started talking to some CPAs, talking to some bankers, and then noticed that there was a huge arbitrage that a lot of non-US people have no idea about. So let me just break down the math. And I've done this in another video, actually breaking down what's the actual cost of accessing US credit along with the points redemptions. But just think about it right now. I was using a debit card, which was getting me, I think it was 1% back on every dollar that I was spending. Instead, I can leverage a Chase Sapphire Reserve or the Amex Gold to get 4x back, 4 times the points back on every dollar that I spend. So I would get 4 points, and typically the worth of a point, the actual value of a point, was around 1 cent per point, right? And so although the value of each point is about 1 cent per point, if you're actually smart about redeeming your points, you understand that there are transfer partners you can move your points around. And if you actually do it right, just like how Gio did it with that business class seat, when I went back from Poland to Toronto, he actually leveraged certain transfer partners to get me back home. And so I soon enough realized that what I'm doing with my business right now, all these limiting beliefs that I have about the US credit system, all I had to do was educate myself more about how this looks like and realize eventually that you can pay 0% taxes with a US LLC, actually use that LLC to unlock payment processors, banking, and credit to then eventually unlock 0% interest business funding, as well as the fact that you get access to the best redemption credit cards. And so that's really why I felt like I scammed myself. Like I literally felt like I scammed myself because I did so much travel in the past and was so negligent, completely ignoring the fact that there's a reason why the airplanes kept saying, go get this credit card and get these points, or go and redeem these points because it's super valuable and whatnot. The reason why is because the airline industry learned that airlines themselves are not profitable. So if you've made it this far, you're probably thinking, okay, I get it. US credit matters, but how do I actually access the American credit system? Well, there's actually a 9-digit number called the ITIN that actually unlocks all of these financial products. And so watch this video over here. I broke down this video breaking down that 9-digit number, how you can get it personally as a non-US resident, non-US citizen. There's literally a reason why they created this ITIN in 1997 by the IRS. So it's absolutely legal for you to get access to these credit cards, right? As long as you follow the legal steps. Again, so without further ado, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.